Yeah, that's it. Alright. Show us that broken leg. Come on. Alright, show me that arm. Perfect. Now I want you to make sure when you scream for help and you scream for your mother and family, I want you to look in the camera when you do it. Alright, cool. The insurrection's coming in now. I want to get a good, nice group photo here before you execute the POWs. Alright, ready? Alright, everybody? Alright, everybody, say Civil War.
You're gonna hang back.
I'm not hanging back.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Go! God bless America.
And today we have Civil War. Better? Cool, better. I don't want to break the illusion here. Welcome back to the MovieMan channel, where seemingly now we cover movies when they're past their relevancy. Civil War is the latest A24-backed film. You know, all the hipsters, all the cinebros such as myself, we love A24 for the most part. You can tell it's a very polarizing film, literally taking place in the not too distant future. Just literally a civil war in our country. A24 kind of dipping their toes into more, this technically is a blockbuster of sorts, but just kind of into more action heavy. It certainly isn't an indie film, which is kind of the ultimate irony, right? If I get on a soapbox for a moment, how a company like A24 or even like Neon right now, or even like IFC, the independent film company, even Shudder is a good example. But it's funny, all companies kind of start as indie film producers or developers or production companies, right? That's how A24 started. But now we're at a point where it's borderline a household name. Most people know it defeats the purpose of it being an indie thing, but anyway, beside the point. This is the latest film by, and we're just gonna hop right into it, director Alex Garland. In terms of his filmography, it's mostly greats, like Ex Machina, which is a phenomenal movie. I would recommend Ex Machina. And then followed it up with Annihilation, which after I sat on it for a while and watched a few video essays, I fully came around to and now fully very much enjoy Annihilation. I did review Men, which, man, it started off so well, started off so promising, and turns into like an artistic fever dream, for lack of a better term. You know, we all saw the trailer for this and saw Alex Garland's name, and we got excited again because it looked like promising, and we were hoping that it would be returned to form. Though it might be the last, because according to recent articles, just due to the political climate surrounding film and cinema, Mr. Garland has fallen out of love with cinema and crafting. So maybe he'll come back around in the future, but as of right now, this very well could be his last film. I wasn't going to get too deep into it, but I'm going to give these quick shout outs just because a lot of interwoven connecting actors to a lot of stuff that I've reviewed, but also a lot of different pieces of media that I love. The lead of this, Kirsten Dunst, been acting since '89, so I mean, Mary Jane Watson and the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies that I personally grew up with, as well as a film that I did cover the year it came out. She was one of the leads in Power of the Dog. Shift over to our secondary protagonist, the kind of the gal that's in her shadow and trying to learn the ropes of what it means to be part of the press and be a photojournalist. We have Kaylee Spaney, who, here we go, any chance I get to bring up this movie, I do. So you can see her on the cover, but she plays Rose in Bad Times at the El Royale, which I always sing this movie's praises. So underrated, such a great flick. And more recently covered on my channel, she played Priscilla in Priscilla. So big name, you know, this wonderful Brazilian man that everybody's thirsting over, Wagner Moura. I knew I recognized this mofo somewhere, but dude, not only was he Pablo Escobar in the Narcos series, that was the bigger one on Netflix, not the American one that came out shortly after, but in my opinion, more importantly, he is the wolf. He is Death, the wolf in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Awesome. They were like, you want all these roles? And he said, what do you think, I'm going to take the coward's way out? Of course, there's still some like fun little cameos and who's who's and little serendipitous casting calls. We got Meth Damon over here in the form of Jesse Plemons, who I would not be surprised to see win an Oscar in the near future. And even Boy from Dune made it over here. Alex Garland's Civil War. Things get to a breaking point between the US government and people that live in the country. So different states and different regions of the country have tried to secede basically from the United States and make up their own new groups or organizations. I believe it's the Western forces that make up California and Texas of all places. Then there's then Florida is its own thing entirely. And some people are still consider themselves, I don't know what you would say, like nationalists or what have you, just people that are just sticking with the president and the current political climate and that are fighting for their rights. But there's a lot of infighting in the states, and just the whole country becomes war-torn essentially. And then we have our Civil War. The reason this review is coming out so late is because I genuinely had to take some time to gather my thoughts on this one. First of all, I saw this once in IMAX at first, and I was like, I couldn't pin down how I felt. I left the theater, I felt one way. My friends that came with me to come see this, very mixed opinions, and I started to have seeds of doubt sown in my head. So after seeing it in IMAX, I went to go see it a second time. Local art house cinema was showing it in 35mm film at the time, so I saw it twice. Definitely prefer IMAX, just a heads up. Watch this film in the highest resolution possible. And I just had to sit on this and marinate on it for a few days. At this point, really a few weeks though, to get my full opinion across. So here we are. I really enjoyed Civil War, personally. I very much liked this movie. Borderline loved it. I get why A24 and whoever cut the trailer and why marketed the film the way that they did, is to get butts and seats. How are you going to sell it? Civil War, Americans versus Americans, and we just happen to be following this group of photojournalists throughout the turmoil, but it's just like, how did it start? How is it going? How might it end? But the film is marketed in the trailers as a film that is the American Civil War. What the film actually is a road trip film that has these photojournalists going across the country to head to the front line and try to go interview the president, and the backdrop happens to be the Civil War. So it's less of a focus on the war, more of a focus on the importance of journalism, and in this case photojournalism, and what that means to people on a human level, what it means to the society, the world around them, as they travel through a war-torn and series of active combat zones in the US. A little bit of subversion from the trailers, but I was okay with it. I liked the conversations that we had about this because it's something that I think is important to talk about. I think most people are pretty much discouraged by the idea of going into a combat zone and being there with the specific intent of taking photos of said suffering. I'm one of those guys that's like, truth even if it hurts. Like, I'm always about the truth. Truth and communication are important tenements to like the foundation of MovieMan and his character, and very direct communication, even sometimes at my own detriment. So in that vein, it would make sense that my philosophy is to support photojournalism in that, look, someone's got to do it. And, yes, there's a fine line between going in for the rush of it. I think a more important way of looking at it is the informative aspect, and to be able to communicate and show people what's going on, even if that means there's suffering or agony or just... We've had some of our most important and historical photos due to the atrocities that are happening. And it's not like these photojournalists are encouraging it to happen, unless you're a Nightcrawler, not causing any of it to happen. This film is gorgeous. Look, I love film, right? And I got to see it the second time around in 35mm. Definitely was a different and still rewarding experience. But the way this film was specifically filmed, it I think is meant to be best enjoyed in high definition, crisp 4K. There's so much more that you see, whether it's emotion on the actors' faces, nature, or people, or certain shots where the foreground is important and everything. Crisp and clear is the best way to see this film. And that being said, there are some absolutely gorgeous sequences, brilliant cinematography. I'll pop the cinematographer up there. If it's to this level of visual finesse and fidelity, then I like to give credit where credit's due. And I know I already told you what the subversion of expectation was between the trailer and the film. I wasn't expecting that kind of low-key bait and switch, but I'm here for it. I enjoyed the road trip through war-torn America, and I like the conversations and the character study revolving around these photojournalists and what all that means and the impact and effect it has on people and the world around them. I will acknowledge the cons, which part of it, again, the marketing. If you've watched my channel long enough, you know for a fact that when it comes to marketing and trailers, I factor that into my overall experience and the quality of a film. I'm in the camp of like, I appreciate the subversion, and I like how the story that I got wasn't quite what I was expecting. That being said, I do agree the marketing is very misleading. About 2 or 3 weeks ago even, A24 put out a slew of these posters, right? These posters for the movie Civil War, but they were all these settings and locations that the movie never goes to. I mean, hell, there's stuff in the main poster for the film, like the sniper rifles and the Statue of Liberty's torch. There's plenty of moments where it looks like, oh, famous landmarks in America occupied by American military trying to defend from separatist states and all that. And I was looking forward to seeing these places. None of that happens in the movie, by the way. And those recent posters, AI generated garbage. And on one hand, I can forgive it in like Late Night with the Devil, right? We reviewed that. That was made long enough ago, and the way they utilized AI was more of a tool. I've made my peace. But for the sake of this, dude, the irony. Not only to have it outsourced to AI in that regard, and then try to like write it off as, oh, it's the point, guys, LOL, but then to not have any of that in the movie to begin with rubs me the wrong way, and it rubs a lot of people the wrong ways. Although I appreciate the bait and switch, as I've said a few times now, I will admit I was disappointed in that the only information we get about the Civil War is through what we see on the road trip and like character exposition, which is one of those movies where you can't just like watch it and ignore it. You have to listen to be able to pick up more of the narrative. You have an inkling, a notion, if you will, as to some of the inciting incidents that ultimately were catalysts for the American Civil War that our characters are now experiencing in the movie. But there's no concrete answer. We don't really know, like, for sure what the inciting incidents were, just have an idea of what happened. But in terms of the inner minutia, the politics of it, how the Civil War actually functioned, a lot of the inner details, if you're looking to get any of that in this film, you, like me, will be admittedly missing out. You will be disappointed. When I went to see this with my friends, it's the worst feeling in the world. You get out of a theater and you're like, man, I feel like that was so good. I can't wait for all of us to enjoy that together. And then like half of us were like, I'm sitting there crestfallen, and people are like, not very good. And then, but that's why you have them there, is to have those conversations. But a couple points were brought up about actors, especially our main characters. A few of my friends went as far as to say the acting was bad, if not borderline atrocious. I respectfully disagree. The characterization they were going for, just like the emotionally detached photojournalist that's in the middle of this war doing their job, I think it all makes sense and matches up, and I thought all the performances were great personally. It's worth also saying that regarding the acting, the whole thing that the friends were pointing out was that a couple characters feel like they're kind of just numb and just kind of reading the lines basically, but there are many moments throughout the film where the humanity in these characters breaks through, either in little moments to themselves or in literal like physical emotional breakdowns where it all just kind of reaches a emotional crescendo, like a fever pitch, if you will, and then just kind of all comes out at once as it would have to. Like, there's depth to these characters and emotions that are there. It's just not portrayed in the typical narrative sense you'd see characters convey their emotions, and it's these more delicate headspaces where it's people that are clearly are traumatized in their own way, and so they aren't immediately reactive, but then eventually are. Or in the case of the girl, like, she is reactive at first and gradually leans towards Kirsten Dunst's character as the movie progresses, as Kirsten's character leans more towards, Kaylee Spaney's mental headspace. But I definitely think all the performances in the movie were great. But again, personal preference, understand it. Also, that scene with Jesse Plemons you saw in the trailer.
Well, you're American, okay? Okay. What kind of American are you? You don't know?
One of the top 5 most tense scenes I've seen all year. Going blind, and when that scene comes up, just like hold your breath. You won't have a choice. End of the day, Civil War is not what it was advertised to be, but in this rare case, I really liked that, and I really enjoyed it. There's more I would have liked from the movie, and I don't like the whole AI controversy nonsense. I'm worried A24, they're wavering. I'm worried they might lose their way in this and get too big for their britches, The direction, cinematography, acting, I liked the story. What little of the Civil War we got to see, I liked how it was all approached. I really enjoyed how this film was made. There's aspects of the ending that character decision-wise, you're like, okay, but why? But overall, coming away from Men, this was great. Is it as good as Ex Machina? Perhaps not. Or even Annihilation? Maybe not. But I really, really enjoyed Civil War, and there are moments in Civil War that I loved. The biggest compliments that I hear about this film, sound design is great, and they liked it whenever there was military combat. And don't get me wrong, it's not all out an action film, but I would definitely agree. All those reasons and many more, I keep getting sidetracked in little tangents and whatnot, would review high 4 out of 5. For me personally, high 4 out of 5. I've seen a lot of positive reviews online. I've seen some negative reviews online. People seem to literally either love or hate this movie, but I'm in the camp of I very much enjoyed it, and I definitely hope that Mr. Garland returns to filmmaking and gets behind the camera at some point in the future again. But if he left us with these, primary 4 films to remember him by, I wouldn't be too heartbroken about it. That's all I gotta say about Civil War. Thank you guys and gals so much for watching. Thank you for your patience. Stay tuned for the next episode of whatever movie I review. And goodbye, travelers.